all these that none of these documentaries would even exist if God did not use this one man to bring them to light.
And the Lord overthrew the Egyptians in the midst of the sea. And the waters returned and covered the chariots and the horsemen and all the host of Pharaoh that came into the sea after them. There remained not so much as one of them. But the children of Israel walked upon dry land in the midst of the sea, and the waters were a wall unto them on their right hand and on their left.
If you open your Bible to the very back where you have all of your maps, you're going to see that most Bibles at least have a path drawn out of the Exodus pathway from when the Israelites left Egypt from slavery, when they were delivered by God through the Red Sea and then all the way to Mount Sinai and through the wilderness. Most Bibles will have a map that depict the pathway and the route that they took. You can throw that map in the trash. That's not the actual route. Ron Wyatt found the actual Red Sea crossing.
When Ron Wyatt was at this spot in 1978, he decided to inspect the waters here for any evidence that may have been left behind from approximately 20,000 chariots, plus the horses, horsemen, and foot soldiers. What he found has been confirmed by others.
Scientists always kept trying to say that they crossed in the Sea of Reeds, which was ankle deep at a certain time of year and stuff. And Dad wanted to prove that it was a biblical miracle. And so he tried to trace their steps from Egypt. And basically he did. He got an airplane and he had this guy named Moses, actually.
Yep.
This is no lie. We hired a pilot in Eilat and his name was Moses, and he flew us up and down through there, and Dad told him what we're looking for. We're looking for a valley that goes all the way through the mountains from here, from the Sinai Peninsula to here. And the guy said, oh yeah, there is one. And back then there wasn't a road even down it, but now they have a road down there.
All the way through, yeah.
It keeps washing out all the time.
There has never been any real convincing evidence, nothing found, nor archaeological evidence found by Cairo, Egypt, that would support the fact that the Israelites crossed there. There has been, however, much evidence found, archaeological evidence, to show that the crossing was here and that Mount Sinai is in Saudi Arabia.
So basically what we have here is the traditional Exodus route from Goshen, where the Israelites were in Egypt. They came out of Goshen and then they crossed over around here somewhere, and this is where the traditional crossing of the Red Sea is. It's really sad because they're basically saying that Egypt's chariots got drowned in this really shallow marsh-like area. They will keep the traditional site of Mount Sinai, and they'll put it here not because of evidence they found, but because Constantine's mother said this was Mount Sinai. So the scholars, with all their wisdom, go along with Constantine's mother, and in order to do that, they got to put the Red Sea crossing over here, because it wouldn't make sense over there. And they also say that this is the real Red Sea crossing because in the Hebrew, it's the Sea of Reeds, the Reed Sea. But if you actually look into it in other places in the Bible, it describes this area right here as the Red Sea as well. So this is also the Red Sea in the Bible. So anyways, the actual Red Sea crossing, they ended up at this beach right here, and then they crossed right here. So the actual Mount Sinai is in Arabia. According to scholars, it's where Constantine's mother said it was. But according to Paul, the apostle, it's in Arabia. And that's where it actually is, and we'll look at that next. But here's where the actual Red Sea crossing is. The actual route starts here, goes down through here, and then they get entangled in the wilderness. And let me see if I have a map of that. Yeah, so as you can see, there's like this windy valley. And that's where Pharaoh realized they would be entangled in the wilderness, and then when it pursued them, and they came out at the beach here, and this is where they actually crossed. There's another bird's eye view of the beach. And as you can see, all of Israel would fit onto this area of land while God protected them with a pillar of fire, cutting off Pharaoh's army coming from behind. They're literally finding chariot wheels. This is all found in that Red Sea area.
Egyptian chariots were known to use metal hubs in the center of the wheels. Using metal detectors, divers have found metal in the raised hubs that are now covered in coral.
So when you dive with underwater metal detector, you can go over all the corals and you don't get any reading. And then when you go over obviously metal or iron or whatever, you do get a reading. So that's the way you know that if you've got a wheel shape and you get a strong metal reading from it, then that would be the difference between just a round coral and something that could potentially be a chariot wheel. So when you compare this particular four-spoked hub to the hubs that you see in the Egyptian Museum, it looks exactly the same, and there's metal where you'd expect to see it.
Here we see another four-spoked chariot wheel with one spoke missing and a center raised hub. The coral here has preserved the chariot parts by retaining the man-made structure, even after the wood has disappeared. Here we see another wheel suspended on its axle, standing at attention. It has 6 spokes and a raised center hub. Ron Wyatt made many dives here and located many artifacts.
That thing in the middle is like the hub of the wheel, and then it's almost like a cross of coral. The wood rotted away. The metal would still be there with coral around it. But as you can see, that's just not a natural coral formation. There shouldn't be any coral at all in this area because there's nothing for it to grow on. But if there was a bunch of chariots down there rotting away, coral would definitely be growing on them. So, as you can see, that's clearly a chariot wheel. This is pretty clearly a chariot wheel. On the right side is giving you like an illustration, but you can even without the illustration, you can see. It just gets more and more obvious. Like, what is that coral doing? That's obviously something sticking up, like an axle. That's just not normal. Come on. Like, what do you think that is? There's also a gold one found, and if you don't think that's a chariot wheel, I don't know what to tell you. That's a chariot wheel.
The premier find here at the crossing site is this gold veneer that was left behind from a four-spoke chariot wheel. The Bible tells us there were 600 choice chariots used in the chase of the children of Israel. This artifact was left behind at a depth of 200 feet. Since specialized equipment would be necessary to raise it to the surface, today it is still in the location where it was found.
Because when Dad first did the cameras, I don't think we even had the scuba gear yet, did we? I think we were just snorkeling
our first
out
trip, we didn't really find anything, except we found the spot where we thought that it was.
But when we actually did go scuba diving, Dad bought 2 little underwater Kodak cameras, and that's what the underwater pictures were taken with. I took a picture of 3 different wheels. The golden chariot wheel picture got drowned in one of the cameras, and the other camera had a bunch of chariot wheels but not the gold one.
Me and Ronnie went down and touched
we touched the gold chariot wheel.
Yeah.
How deep was that?
Somewhere around 180 feet.
Yeah, it was
right around there.
Like Ronnie said earlier, we were swimming about 35 feet where you can stay all day, whatever, 32 feet. So we were up there swimming around, and if we saw anything, we'd go down.
On a number of trips, we've brought metal detectors to Nueva, and these reveal that inside the coral there is metal that would be consistent with what we'd expect from finding remains of the Egyptian army. Now, some people have asked, well, if that's the case, why don't you just bring up artifacts, some of this coral that contains this metal? There's a very simple reason for that. As you can see on the sign, it's strictly forbidden to touch or remove any coral in the Red Sea. So for us to do so would be violating Egyptian law.
Further south in the Gulf of Aqaba, you can see that things have been washed up on the land, like sea stars, corals, and other things twisted into one another, like a disastrous whatever. Like a washing machine has been treating the material, so to speak. And also in that kind of material we can find bronze. And bronze is a metal that's made by humans, so it's not a natural one.
You can see how rugged these mountains are. And much of the Gulf of Aqaba is just as rugged underwater. So if God had parted the water with the underground terrain looking like this, it would have been impassable.
There are 2,000-meter high mountains around the Gulf of Aqaba. There are 2,000-meter deep waters in the deepest section. Huge falls from the peaks to the bottom. You can ask the question, how can we cross the seabed? I mean, we just take away the water. We don't talk about the water. But how can you just cross? First, you could not have any mud on the seabed. You need a solid ground. Horses should be able, full speed, going across that material, whatever the material is. In the middle of the Gulf of Aqaba, there is a shallow section, relatively speaking, shallow. And the interesting thing is that the downhill slope and then the uphill slope on the other side is within the criteria for wheelchairs in the US. You know, it can't be too much uphill or downhill with a wheelchair because it's too much work, so to speak. So the downhill slope and the uphill slope is within these limits. That's a scientific statement.
This is the Wadi Watiya. This is the canyon that connects the Sinai Desert to the Red Sea. And you can see these very rugged mountains. If you're walking down this canyon, you've got to follow it all the way. You can't go left or right. We find in Exodus chapter 14 verse 3 a description where Pharaoh would say the children of Israel are entangled in the land, the wilderness has shut them in. That's a perfect description of this wadi leading down to the Red Sea. Finally, after walking about 30 kilometers through this wadi, they come to the Red Sea. You can see behind us the Gulf of Aqaba, and behind that, the mountains of Midian. Josephus described the mountains around the Red Sea crossing site as impassable by reason of their roughness. You can see these mountains here around Nuweiba Beach are extremely rough. You can see the loose rock, the shingle, very hard to climb and very dry and barren. Had the Egyptians attacked the Hebrews at the Red Sea crossing site and they'd scattered through these mountains, it would have been an absolute disaster for the Israelites.
The interesting thing is that the gravel at the location in the midsection of the Gulf of Aqaba, since it's shallow there, the tidal current goes back and forth and keep this clean. And immediately when you take away the water, it's like concrete. It's very, very solid. So no problem with the horses, no problem with the chariots, no problems with the oxen and the oxen chariots and so forth. Just go across.
Since there are chariot parts on this side of the Red Sea crossing, could there be other chariot parts on the other side of the Gulf, showing a continuation of artifacts? On the shore opposite of Nuweiba, inspection of the seafloor in Saudi Arabia has also been conducted to see if chariot parts can be found on this side of the Red Sea crossing. While investigating the Saudi Arabian waters, Viveka Pontian found this beautiful round chariot wheel specimen with a raised center hub. This is confirmation of the chariot parts continuing to the other side of the crossing site, opposite Nueva.
They also found a human femur bone, possibly a human rib cage, which is really hard to see, and a horse hoof. Horses are not on the Sinai Peninsula today, so okay then, where did that come from? Why is that in the Red Sea crossing? So I think there's enough evidence here to easily conclude that this is the actual Red Sea crossing, and as we'll see in a moment here, this is definitely the Red Sea crossing because Mount Sinai is on the other side of it.